everyone, I'm Melissa from Safeguru. Today I'm here with Jonathan Grin. Thanks for joining us today, Jonathan.
Hello, Melissa. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So if you're ready, let's begin with the questions.
Sure thing.
Okay, so my first question to you is, can you tell us about yourself? Who is Jonathan Grin and what is your profession?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Grin. I'm a 30-year-old offshore worker. My position is called Floorhand or Roughneck, you would say. I've been working in the drilling industry for 9 years on drilling vessels. My work has taken me all around the world, from the North Sea to Norway, Africa, and Asia.
Oh, that's really interesting. And can you tell us about what your day-to-day tasks involved and what are some of the risks associated with them?
Yes, of course. Day-to-day task, we are normally do a pre-tower meeting prior to starting the jobs. So we'll have a meeting before in the mornings, depends on the shift that we do. We do day shift or night shift. We'll have the discussions of what operations are going to be happening during that day or during our full our tower. So we do that. Then we go out to the locations, and then for me per se, I have to do my checkup. So run the checkups on my equipment, that everything is up to date with the maintenance, and that's basically it. So that is how we say, that will be one of the maintenance I have to do, my daily to day task. Then depends on the operations that we do. And if, let's say, we are running in pipe in the hole, then we load our pipe to the rig floor, make up the tubulars using equipment as iron roughneck or rig tongs, and run this down in the hole. Other days we could be actually doing mixing, because we need to do a big quantity of mix for chemicals. So we'll be in the sack store, getting all the chemicals ready, mixing them up using all the PPE that is required for this equipment, for these chemicals to use. And yes, like that. So every day can be a different thing to do.
And can you mention some of the risks involved with those tasks?
Yes, per se on the rig floor, when we are working, we have tubulars are like 90 feet long. So we need somebody up high. So we always have equipment being moved above our heads. So there's a lot of potential for like dropped objects, but we try to always minimize this by keeping a red zone barriers on the rig floor. So do not stand on the red zone, we call it. So people have to stay out of the moving equipment that's above their heads. Also, every week, or depends on the operation what's been done, we have a daily checks routine. So we have to do drop inspections. So we go up the derrick. This is the pointy part of the derrick, like on the rig floor, when you see it's a very pointy part. We go up there and we do drop inspections. We start from the top all the way down to make sure there's no equipment or tools or pieces or anything that can fall down and hurt any potential personnel that's standing below. Those are one of the big risks. Also on the sack store, you'll be moving and using chemicals to move them around, and there's big potential for like skin irritation, or let's say the powder, the dust flying around and hit you in the eye. So we have a proper PPE for that. You have a face shield, goggles, proper gloves, I would say latex. I don't know which category it is, but it's more, more protection on top of the ones you already have on.
Okay, that's really interesting to know. And I understand that you work in an isolated environment where you stay with a number of other workers, which can be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks at a time, sometimes more, and you don't have any days off. How do you deal with that?
For that, I would say for me personally, it would be a mentally state. I worked in an environment I quite enjoy. When you have a good personnel on board and the facilities on the rig actually accommodate those needs, it's all good. The only thing you start missing is, being at home and things like that. But it's all about mental state for some personnel. I quite enjoy it. I cannot complain. I quite liked it. So it's all a mental state for me.
Yeah, it's all about having the right state of mind to work in that kind of environment.
I would say so, yes.
Great. And can you tell us if you need any specific training or certificates to work offshore?
Yes, you do. You will need for working offshore. One of the requirements is a MIST, is a minimal industry safety training course that you have to do. You can do this from home. The other things you would need is survivals that will tell you how to survive in an environment of emergency, from a blowout to a fire or any accident that could occur. So there'll be a survival training that you have to also do, and this is you do it yearly to refresh it. So yes, you do need some certifications for working offshore.
Okay. And how has the pandemic affected your work? What are the differences between before and after the pandemic?
Well, due to this pandemic, it has changed a lot. I have colleagues and stuff that've been on the rig for approximately 6 months because of the locations that they're on. They cannot get off due to the restrictions. They're not allowed to get out of well, they could probably get out of the vessel. Not really sure of this, but they cannot get out of the country because it's one of the restricted red zones that they're not allowed to move out. But luckily they are already. But yes, this pandemic has really affected a lot of personnel for this, including myself. Now when we want to go offshore, we have to have PCR test first, be isolated at home for 2 weeks, or maybe in a hotel, isolated for 2 weeks. Depends which regions we go to. Every single one will be different. So that's how, yes, it has affected us.
So I understand that it has affected traveling there, but what about offshore on the rig? Do you need to wear masks, or are there any stricter restrictions for when you're actually on board?
Well, as mentioned, we do the quarantine at home or on the hotel, and we do PCR tests. So prior to boarding the vessel, the PCR have to be, all the results have to be negative before you get on the rig. And also when you get on the rig, you'll get the quick PCR test in some vessels. And the previous one I've been on, I had my PCR test prior getting on board on the rig, all negative. We move on to the rig. And on the rig is very good with the controlling of the pandemic, having alcohol dispensers on handrails at every door in the galley. And when we're in the galley, we try to not all be sitting all together. There's a bit of space. But if everybody on board the vessel has been tested or negative, this restrictions is minimized, so we all can be working with no worries of the pandemic. So there's no need to wear no mask and things like this.
The drilling industry is obviously considered very dangerous. There's so many potential risks. Can you tell us about some of the preventative measures that are taken to reduce some of those risks?
Yes, example, on the rig floor, we have a lot of potential like for dropped objects or high pressure equipment. So the best barriers that we have for this is actually putting barriers in certain designated areas, so people do not cross these areas. For example, the rig floor for the drilling department, we have the red zone floor. So personnel, they have to come up to the rig floor to talk to the driller or any case scenario, any questions that they have. Prior to them to getting on board of the rig floor or coming into the rig floor, they have to call the rig floor and ask the permission for the driller or the assistant driller if they, it's okay to come up and have a talk if they have to do any job up there. But yes, we have equipment now for personnel like myself and my colleagues. Every time we are outside the accommodations, we have to wear our PPE, which consists of a coverall, hard hat, boots, gloves, and safety glasses. So we stay safe like that. We work with oil-based mud. It's a chemical compound that's very irritating to the skin. So for that, we have special gloves, and if we're gonna get very messy, we wear slicker suits above, on top of our coverall to minimize like getting soaked in the oil-based mud. That's pretty much it.
Okay, so it's quite a physically demanding role. Are there any kind of medical examinations that are carried out to be able to work offshore?
Yes, there is supposed to be a medical every 2 years, and it has to be by OGUK approved. This involves from hearing to eyesight, lung capacity, and it's a full medical checkup. And yes, we do need this prior to going offshore.
Okay, and are there any other spontaneous types of tests that you have to take when you're on board the rig or ship?
Yes, there is. Normally, the spontaneous test, they'll do it prior to getting on board on the rig. They'll have it done in the heliport. You can do a drug test or alcohol test. And only a few rare occasions that I've been on board on the rig, we did have to do a random drug test. So yes, they do every now and then they do random spontaneous checks.
Okay, and I wanted to ask, considering that you work in such a high-risk environment and it's your own personal safety that's at risk, what do you think about PPE in your industry?
That is very good and well needed. It's good to have the PPE for a lot of equipments and a lot of hazard materials. Like our gloves, we use gloves with impact protection for pinch points and potential trapped fingers. So we have this. We have gloves are protective against chemical, very, how do you say, irritation for the skin. And yes, it's really good that we have PPE in this case scenarios.
And do you have any kind of procedures in place if you were using PPE and it wasn't up to scratch, maybe it was damaged and it was no longer fit for purpose? Do you have some kind of procedure that you could report it?
Yes, we do. Normally on the rig floor or even on the sack store, we have a cabinet with our safety equipment. It's a stationary with, let's say, with a face shield, respiratory mask, I already say face shield with the goggles, and all of this equipment has to be inside the stationary with a checklist to make sure that all the PPE that we are required to have there is always in place. And if it runs down, let's say latex gloves or a face shield is damaged, we have to restock this. So we go to the storekeeper and we get it from him, fill up a logbook saying that we took this equipment. We fill up the stationary cabinet, and if it's needed, we inform the safety officer that we got more equipment that we required on the stationary prior to the checklist. Also the same we have for like working up at height, we have harnesses. These harnesses have to be daily checked and maintained very well in good conditions, and prior to using it, do a checkup that no stitches are damaged or that is actually fit for purpose.
Okay, well, I've come to the end of my questions. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I'm all good. Thank you. Just wanted to say thank you to you, Melissa, and Safeguru for having me in.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I think we've had a great conversation today and we've covered some really interesting points. And thank you for taking time out of your day to speak with us. So thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thank you.